In this video, we're going to talk about budgeting. And to do budgeting, we have to have an understanding of a need versus a want. So a need is something that we're going to consider life and death. Okay. It is an item needed or something needed, an item or service needed to survive. Now, there's a lot of arguments to be made about how certain jobs might require certain things that others don't need. We'll talk more about that as we kind of look at some specific examples. But needs would be things like food, shelter. Most people would say we need healthcare, right? Gotta have some help with taking care of our health. That could be life or death, etc. There's a lot of things that would qualify for needs. Wants, though. Wants are items or services that make our life more comfortable. Or pleasant. However you want to say that. But it's not required to survive. Now, there are arguments that sometimes wants can become needs depending on our mental health. But again, those are kind of extreme examples that we'll look at case by case. So an example of a want would be some sort of streaming service. Most people have like Netflix or Amazon Prime or something like that, right? But those are really wants. Those aren't necessary for living. You don't need them to survive. The latest cell phone. Some people have to get the new Apple phone that comes out. That's not necessary. I would even argue a smartphone is not necessarily required in life. A satellite phone would probably be more practical for survival. All right, you get the idea. But it's this idea for life and death, right? Survival versus things that make our life comfortable. Now, I know that wants are important. And of course, there are leeway with what we classify as wants. All right. But we'll kind of, like I said, take it case by case for each individual and assume for the basic person, without these specialized jobs or situations, where they fall in most categories of needs versus wants. Okay, so some terminology we will need to use for budgeting. Gross monthly income. This is the actual money that you're being paid from whatever company it is or your own company. It's that money that you're getting paid before taxes. So it's your income before taxes. Wow, there's an N there. Income before taxes. Okay. And it's considered your earned income. It's what you've earned. Adjusted income is when taxes are taken out. So it's your take-home pay. So it's after taxes. It also could possibly include Social Security. Maybe if your company does retirement, it would include retirement. But it's the money you actually get to use every month to cover your bills. Fixed costs are costs that are the same, constant every month. And most of us understand that that would probably qualify for rent or mortgage, right? Like that would be a fixed cost. If you bought a new car, you might be making a payment on that. Oh, car insurance, right? If you have a car insurance is a fixed cost. There's those kind of costs that are constantly the same. Yes, there's might be moments where there's adjustments, but for the most part, it's constant. You can depend on that's going to be the money you're going to take out. So here I'll put housing, insurance, like car insurance, or if you're paying healthcare insurance, that could be a fixed cost. Variable costs are costs that change every month or costs that change. and it kind of depends. So a variable cost, a good example of a variable cost would be gas if you have a car, or the water bill, or the electric bill. I mean, don't get me wrong, they could be pretty close to, you could give like a good guess at what it might be, but it could change depending on the month. All right. Okay. So let's go ahead and do an example that has us kind of assign wants versus needs. And again, we're going to assume this is for the basic individual. If you want to pause the video, try this yourself, and then listen to my thoughts about it, that's fine. If you just want to kind of hear what I think, you can just kind of continue. But in a class, I'd normally have you pause and kind of answer this yourself. Give your own thoughts about what is a need versus want. So most people, cosmetics are not necessary. So that would be a want. It's not necessary for survival. I know there's an argument to be made that if your job is something like, here, I'm going to zoom in a little. If your job is something like being a social media influencer, a beauty person who does makeup tutorials on YouTube or something, right? Okay, I get it. There might be a need for cosmetics for job purposes, but that's not the average individual, and therefore it's not needed for survival. Clothing, that's a need. And the reason is if you go without clothes, especially if it's cold, you could die from exposure. Okay. But you also get arrested. So yeah, we need our clothes. Housing, that is a need. Netflix, it is a want. Groceries, that's a need. Food is needed. A movie night, that's a want. A vacation, that's a want. Now, I know people are going to pause and say, but it might be necessary for your mental health to take a vacation. Of course it is. Of course it is. I'm not saying that having a vacation is not something that might make your life better and therefore improve your mental health, of course. But you don't necessarily have to go somewhere expensive. You don't even necessarily have to go somewhere. You know, staycations are a thing. Okay. So the idea is that it's not necessary to literally live. But there are arguments. If you're depressed, you might need it. Okay, I get it. Those are extreme examples. Most people, it's not necessary for their survival. Electricity and gas, well, if you're cooking, that's going to be a need. Though I think there's an argument to be made for those people who are survivalists, right? Who cook on the fire. All right. But we'll assume that these are people who maybe have a child, need to heat up the food or something. All right. Childcare. We'll go ahead and qualify that as a need because most people who have children need their children to be looked after so they can go to work. Not everybody has the luxury of being able to stay at home. But if you are able to stay home, that could possibly border on being a want. All right. Eating out, that is a want, not a need. All right. Health insurance, we're going to classify that as a need because you could need it to survive. Transportation, we'll go ahead and classify that as a need as well because it is needed for most people to get to work. Yes, I'm aware there's some people who work from home, but let's say you hurt yourself and you need to get to the hospital. Time could be of the essence. All right. So it could be a need, some sort of way of transportation is often a need for the average individual. Not always the case, but for most it is. All right, there we go. So let's look at an example, kind of the scenario. So we have Michael, who's a father of 2 young children, currently working as a maintenance man at a shipyard. His wife stay at home. He earns $40, $15. I'm sorry, 40 hours a week, $50 an hour. His take-home pay is $480, and he has items to purchase for the week. So he gets paid every week, and right now he has some items he wants to spend this week. So we're going to use our table here to categorize things as needs versus wants. They went ahead and put the water bill into a need category. I agree. And then we'll classify each of the rest of these. And again, if you want to pause the video, try it yourself, compare your answer to what I put, that's fine. Or you can kind of work with me. So milk, I'm going to go ahead and assume because they have children that is a need. All right. You know, the argument for calcium and whatnot, kind of an old fashioned idea. But also most people who cook from home, milk is one of those ingredients that are kind of needed. Electric bill, yeah, you need electricity, so we'll put that as a need. I'm going to drop putting the dollar sign just for the sake of writing. Movie tickets for a date night, that's a want. I know, but there are cheaper things you can do than go to the movies. Dinner after for 75 bucks, heck no, that's a want. So that's like typical now, right? Expensive. Babysitter, well, if we're saying that going to a movie is a want, then getting a babysitter is probably a want too. Oil change, now because he has to go to a shipyard, I'm going to assume then he needs his vehicle, so $35, that's going to be a need for going to his job. Diapers, yeah, that's a need. Bread, rice, yeah, those are pretty basic staples for basic food. Ice cream that has to be Ben and Jerry's, okay, that would be an example of a want. Going above and beyond what really should be in the food budget. Lunch out, well, that's silly of Michael. That would be, oops, sorry, a want, not a need. He could take it. Baby soap, shampoo, that would be a need. Paper towels, bathroom tissues, that would be a need. A decorative rug, because they're using that word decorative, we're going to assume that's a want. All right, and then we're going to total these amounts. So grab your calculator here. I'm going to zoom out so I can actually see the whole thing. Oops, go out a little bit more. There we go. All right. So you're going to go ahead and total, grab your calculator, total the needs column versus the wants column. And we'll write it down. So go ahead and pause the video and put that in. I have totaled both of mine already, and hopefully I got it right. So I have for needs, I have $255. And for wants, I have $268. Okay, so here, I'm just going to make sure I input it into my calculator correctly. And, oh, sorry, there's a water bill here that's at the top. Don't forget that for the needs category. Yeah, 45, 12, 17. Okay, so that's what I got. All right. So we're going to use this information to answer the following question. So what percent of his purchases are qualified as needs? All right, so I'm going to zoom back in here just so my writing will be a little bit cleaner. What percent is needs? So we're using his take-home pay of $480, right? His $480 is to help us calculate the percentages. So if he needs $255 worth of items, and we know he makes $480, we're going to divide that on the calculator. And that comes up with, I'm getting from the calculator, 0.53125. But as a percent, that would be 53%. So I'm rounding it and then I move the decimal 2 places, 53%. All right. So that's his needs. Now for wants, his wants were, let's see, I got 268. So 268, should have given myself a little more space, divide by 480. Comes out to 55%. Here, I got 5833 repeating. Okay, which is 56%. Sorry, if I'm rounding it correctly, 56%. Okay, would of his take-home pay would be considered wants. All right, so what percent is left over for savings? None. Nothing is left over. Okay, because the wants are too large of a category. His wants are 55% or 56% of his income. That's too much. They're trying to do too much with his take home right now. Okay, so are there any wants that Michael could eliminate, and what do you suggest that he eliminates? So I'm going to come back up here, and this is of course dependent on what you think. Now we could take out every want, okay? But there are some wants that maybe we'll leave. So for instance, what if we, like, maybe for his wife's sake, maybe Michael having lunch out is something that saves her time, right? And we're like, okay, so because she's home, maybe we're comfortable with keeping the $50 lunch out just so she doesn't have to worry about his lunch, I don't know, something like that. Or maybe I would argue that, okay, um, that let's see, maybe the decorative rug would be something that's probably not necessary. Uh, or perhaps movie night would be nice, but not with the dinner. So that would probably change the babysitter amount. Okay. But maybe not this week. Maybe next week they could do it. So I'm going to suggest maybe just for the sake of uh, a couple special treats. So ice cream for them and the lunch. I'm going to allow those too, but I'm going to suggest that they don't go on the date and that they don't buy the decorative rug. So no date or decorative rug. Now, most people would be like, just get rid of all of them, right? Most people would be like, you don't need any of that stuff. All right. And that's okay. I understand that we we're really harsh with other people's money for themselves. Okay. But I'm trying to be sympathetic and I'll say, just don't do the date, don't get the rug. Maybe save those for another week and then you can enjoy those instead. All right, so those would be the two. So the date would include the movie, the dinner, and the childcare. Here, I'll just list that out. Those would be the items that would be eliminated. Okay, you might say, no, they need a date night. Don't do the others. That's fine. That's you can kind of do it based on what you feel. But for the sake of the video, if you want to kind of see what I'm going to do after I eliminate these wants, okay, what's his new percent? So the movie was $25. I'm trying to remember. Oops, $25. Dinner was 75, childcare was 60, and then the rug was 50. Okay, so I'm going to total those. So 210. So 210 from the wants that I think should be eliminated. In number 3, which means then I'm saying that from the 268 originally, spend $58. Okay. So the new percent of $58 divided by, sorry, I can't remember. Is it 40? Yes, it is. $480 gives me a percent of 12%. I'm getting 0.2083 repeating, but that would be 12% when rounded. All right, so 12%, a little bit more reasonable. I mean, again, maybe you'd argue that the date night is the part that should be kept and the other items not kept. It's up to you. We're talking about what a good basic setup would be. So eliminating what percent is left over for savings. So now I'm going to take the 12% that I have for the want, and then the needs up here of 53%. I'm going to add those together. So 12% plus 53% comes out to 65%. So 65% of his income is going to wants and needs. That leaves 35% left over for savings. Subtracting that from 100. Now, in general, this is the rule you want to use. We actually came pretty close for wants, needs, and savings. Actually, a little bit under. So for needs, you want about 50% of your income to be needs. For wants, 30% for wants, and then 20% for savings. So if you kind of keep that general setup, you're going to be comfortable. You're going to live a pretty comfortable life and be able to save and still have some nice things like maybe going out on a date. If you set yours up differently, maybe your setup would have come out a little differently and been even closer to the budget rule. I was a little strict, right? 12% only for what I considered reasonable, all right, for spending. But there you go. That's kind of the general outline you want to use when doing a budget.